to get in. And welcome to all of our guests who are in person with us. It's so nice to see you.
Can I start? Noting the hour and the presence, oh, that's really loud. Okay, sorry. It's like really loud. Noting the hour and the presence of a quorum, I call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. This meeting is being conducted as a hybrid. All of our school committee members are here in the auditorium without masks, along with our presenters and any members of the public that choose to join us here. Ginny and Yevon will be joining us late, but Evelyn Abaya Isa, Diane Baum, Adam Klein, Amy Krishnamurthy, John Peterson, Nora Shine, Angie So, Yevon, nope, Kira and myself, Kira Cook and myself will be late. The script is wrong, Beth. In an ongoing effort to make our meeting as secure as possible, members of the public who wish to comment virtually during the meeting were asked to register 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting using the link also found at the top of the agenda. Members who are here in person may stand up at the public microphone as we have done in the past. Members of the public who wish to view the meeting virtually may use Acton TV's YouTube channel found at the top of the agenda. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on Acton TV's website at actontv.org. I will remind everybody about public participation that there will be a section for public participation for things that are not on the agenda, but if you wish to comment on things that are on the agenda, you need to wait until we reach that agenda item. So, welcome everybody in person. It's nice to see everybody's faces. And to see our members that are presenting to us in person is super exciting as well. So I welcome everybody. We do not have our student rep, I believe, tonight. Is that still true? Okay. See, look, I was flexible. It says that he was here, and he's not. Okay, so the very first item on the agenda is public participation. So if members of the public who are here in person or pre-registered would like to speak about an item that is not on the agenda, would they please raise their hand so they can be recognized to speak for 3 minutes each? Nobody in the audience.
There's nobody online who's raised their hand either.
Super. Okay, Peter, it's your turn.
Okay, we're going to just promote Larry and Dory and David Crane momentarily here.
I'm waiting for my cue.
Welcome, David. How are you?
I'm terrific. How are you? It's really, it's good to see everybody sitting around each other.
We're just working to bring Larry into the meeting as well.
Yep, Larry, you are a panelist, and when you're ready, you can go ahead and turn on your camera and mic.
I'm just renaming myself. I was my wife for a moment, so. Thank you very much. I agree with David. It's wonderful to see people back in the room and sitting together, and certainly see some of those masks off and faces present. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the reasons we wanted to bring Larry and David up, we want to just take a moment tonight and recognize and thank our departing administrators at the end of this year. So we have 3 administrators who are leaving us in a couple of weeks here. Larry Dory is retiring after 27 years of service to the Acton-Boxborough schools. During his time here, Larry served as a counselor at ABRHS, an assistant and associate principal, and as the principal of the high school for the last 4 years. So Larry's going to be greatly missed and has made an absolutely tremendous impact on students and the community during his time here at AB. So Larry, thank you so much. And David Crane is also retiring and has served as the principal of the McCarthy Town Elementary School for the last 12 years. David has brought a passion for social emotional learning, reading, and maintaining the uniqueness of the McCarthy Town Elementary School community. We will miss David's leadership and strong voice for children, the choice program in our schools, and for his school community. So David, thank you so much.
Thank you too, Peter.
And finally, Debbie Dixon is also leaving us at the end of this year. As you know, she has been here for the last 2 years as the interim director of special education. I remember giving her a call about maybe a quarter years ago, and I said, come on, Debbie, what could go wrong? And 2 years later in a pandemic, she's still with us, but she is leaving us at the end of this year. So Debbie, thank you so much for joining us for the last couple of years. And so, we do have a small token of appreciation for each of you. And so David and Larry, I will see you tomorrow and I will come around with that. And Debbie, I'm gonna just come over and give you that.
And while Peter does that, not every person on staff touches every family, but Larry Dory has in fact touched my family. So I have privately thanked him, and I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank him.
Thank you, John.
I don't know if any of you have any parting words of wisdom for our committee tonight, but you're welcome to share anything.
Don't tempt me. I would like to take this opportunity, though, if I could, just briefly, to thank the committee and to thank the leadership team for 12 years of doing something that's really not really allowed or permitted in other districts, and that is to have the autonomy as an elementary school principal to innovate and to choose a path that we could go on, knowing that we'd have the support of central office. I think that's an unusual circumstance, and not many elementary school leaders in the Commonwealth get that opportunity. So I want to thank everybody for allowing that to happen for me at McCarthy Town School and for my staff and also for my colleagues at the elementary level. So thank you very much for that.
I don't want to make your meeting any longer than it may be, but I'm going to take this opportunity since David did to really just look at the last year and a half and thank Peter Light and the central office staff for their support of the high school. I really thank the school committee for their support as we've gone through this time, and certainly the towns of Acton and Boxborough. I want to recognize and give a special thank you to someone who's been very important to me over the years, and that's Marie Altieri. I've learned a lot from her in terms of working with people and approaching things with grace and a fair mind. So thank you again, all.
Thank you, Debbie.
I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to work here. It has been my pleasure. The one good thing I can say about the pandemic is that it allowed me to stay here for 2 years, not one. And it really has been my pleasure to work alongside a team of brilliant administrators, fantastic parents and a parent group, a wonderful school committee, a wonderful community, and the best of all are the kids. And I look forward to checking in on what's happening within special education. I'm excited for the future of special education in the district, and thank you.
All right, so thank you, everyone. David and Larry, you are welcome to take off because,
Can I just say a quick
Oh.
thank you to Larry, please?
absolutely.
So, Larry, I'm not feeling well, but it's because of you I'm here tonight. I didn't want to miss a chance to say thank you to you, and I would say my thank you privately, but you're one of the people that really touched my family's life in Acton, Foxborough, and you've worked with us in so many different instances. So thank you for your leadership and for being such an incredible person.
I just want to say thank you to David for creating such a wonderful community at McCarthy Town. I've also said my thank you privately, but I just want to say as a mom who was doing the school choice thing, like so many other nervous moms, I walked into McCarthy Town and I found a school that I knew would make my two boys feel special and known and seen, and that's because of the community that you made. So thank you so much, David, for your service and what you created. It's meant a lot to me and my family, and I'm sure so many others at McCarthy Town.
Thank you, Kira. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, everyone. So we will let you take off now, so thank you. And I know, Larry, you're hanging out for the high school handbook in a little while, so we'll see you back in a few.
Goodbye, all. Thank you again.
So a couple other updates for you. We are sending this out tomorrow, but our Teaching and Learning Department just recently launched an elementary summer family resources website. And that is linked in the update that will go out to families, but it includes all sorts of ideas for families to support social emotional learning, anti-bias resources, physical exercise, the arts, literacy, science, technology, and engineering, math, history, social sciences, digital literacy, and some virtual summer camps that people may be interested in. So thank you so much to the Teaching and Learning staff for creating that valuable resource for our families. Also, our community education department, we want to make sure everyone knows that is fully back up and running for the summer for in-person programming. So we are going to be sending home the brochure for all of the various summer programs that students may be interested in, and want to make everyone aware of that. A little bit of a vaccine update. As you're likely aware, all of our COVID-19 vaccines are now available for ages 12 plus. Some of our vaccination rates are absolutely tremendous. So at Blanchard, we have about 64% of eligible sixth graders who have already received their first dose. Conant, about 78% of eligible sixth graders have received their first dose. Douglas is 66%, Gates 64%, McTee 64%, Miriam 60%. Those are great vaccination rates considering that vaccine is just becoming available. The junior high continues to be about 60%, and the high school is nearly 80% of students have received at least one dose. So absolutely fantastic. Also to continue on, some of our summer COVID-19 protocols. So the Department of Education has asked school districts to continue with school year protocols through the summer when students are present for in-person activities. And so what that means for the summer is that when we're working with students, indoors students still will need to wear masks. Outdoors students are not required to wear masks. Pretty simple for that. For staff, when staff are working directly with students, indoors they are required to wear masks at all times, and outdoors masks are not required if they're fully vaccinated, and they're encouraged if they're unvaccinated outdoors, and they cannot maintain distance. However, when adults are working together only or in adult settings, at that point it is the state guidance then, so masks are no longer required for adults if they're vaccinated, and they're recommended if they're unvaccinated. So very similar to the state protocols, but when we're working with kids, we still are being asked to maintain the, pretty much the school year protocols. We do want to just keep telling everybody that, as a reminder, DESE has indicated that all of DESE-issued COVID protocols will be lifted at the start of next year. It is possible that DPH may issue some additional guidance for schools over the summer. The one area that they've hinted at as a possibility are masks for elementary school students, because vaccinations are not widely available. They haven't hinted at anything else yet, so it feels to me like that may be what we see, but certainly more to come as summer progresses. So happy to take any questions about those updates.
Nora actually circulated a very interesting blog post that relates to your comment about summer learning resources. And sadly, education is not immune, apparently, to phishing kinds of attacks where people will try and lure you into something that is apparently educational but actually is not. And I wondered if the school, had any resources or guidance with respect to questions parents might have, about, resources that they might come across.
Sure, Deb, do you want to speak to that?
I think there's quite a bit of that information on the digital literacy website that is also linked to that site, and we can certainly make it more prominent before that goes out, just to put, an alert on that. But that is something that the digital literacy team has been working hard to make sure that people are aware of how to protect students, their identity, and all the other kinds of things that they can come across, on the internet.
I do. With regard to the summer rules, will those also apply to community ed activities?
Yes, community ed activities will fall under, they fall kind of dually under summer rules and as well as kind of the early childcare rules set by the state. So they're in the process of taking a look at how those two merge, but they're relatively similar.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any other questions. So we will move right into our presentation. So we are fortunate enough tonight to have Amanda Bailey and Carrie Weaver join us from the CPAC with their annual presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Our names are Amanda Bailey and Carrie Weaver. Alongside Abe Gutierrez, we are the co-chairs of the Acton-Boxborough Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC, for the 2020-2021 school year. After CPAC elections last night, Abe and I will be joined by Kara Lafferty in the co-chair role next year, while Carrie steps into the position of standing committee chair for outreach. We're here this evening to update the school committee on the CPAC's efforts over the past school year and to tell a partial story of how the pandemic impacted families. We have a couple new school committee members attending remotely, so by way of introduction, the CPAC is a state-mandated, volunteer-run organization to advise the district on matters pertaining to the education and safety of students with disabilities. This is whether they have an IEP, a 504, or neither. Per Mass General Law, the CPAC also participates in the planning, development, and evaluation of the district's special education programs. This matters for the school committee as it impacts the budget, policies, procedures, community representation, and advocacy. The CPAC works on two levels, individually and collectively. In addition to advising and providing resources for families, we use information gleaned from these conversations, our business meetings, forums, and surveys in an advisory capacity to affect district-level change. We find what benefits students with disabilities benefits all students. We are fortunate in AB to have one of the more successful working relationships in the state among the CPAC, the school committee, and the administration to accomplish this. It's all much easier when we're not in a pandemic. For those who recognize this slide, it was almost 5 years ago I last used this. Parent advocate Kristen Lind developed care mapping as a tool to convey to clinicians what it's like to be a caregiver of a child with complex medical needs. This has been described as a picture that tells 1,000 words. At the center is the child, in this case a non-disabled 6-year-old, surrounded by family and the web of supports or needs the family uses to care for that child: school, health, recreation. This collapsed during the pandemic onto the family, a reality familiar to everyone here. This care map depicts the supports around an autistic 6-year-old with what we'd know as an Asperger profile who served in a general education classroom. If you mentally corrected me to 6-year-old with autism, I'm making a deliberate choice to use identity first language. This illustration looks different for children with other disabilities. Complex medical needs would make the left side of the map expand. Motor or other therapies would blow out the right. Even for a child with less significant care needs, this is still going to be more than a non-disabled peer, whether it's executive functioning coaching and homework help, or academic intervention and counseling in school. These webs also collapsed. While there have been heroic efforts by the school to reestablish the supports in the upper right, we still have many families struggling to approach their baselines pre-pandemic with regard to support, particularly respite. Because parents and caregivers were thrust into the role of providing a free, appropriate public education, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education underscored throughout its guidance this year the need to listen to families. Anecdotally, AB did better at this than many other districts in the Commonwealth. While we don't have survey findings to present to you this evening, we look forward to capturing those experiences in the fall. The state, advocacy organizations, and the CPAC also worked to get tools for data collection, communication, documentation, etc., into parents and guardians' hands to support an eventual return to the classroom. By most reports, this spring's transition back was well supported. We will open a feedback form as school lets out, as we did last summer, to capture some of what worked ahead of a formal survey in the fall. But we need to stress that while the return was by and large a success, we're heading into 2.5 months of little to no structure for many. The regression window is far from over. To support families through this year, the CPAC monitored and continues to stay abreast of the technical assistance advisories and guidance to disseminate information to families regarding compensatory services, basic rights in a pandemic, transition to in-person learning, etc. We continue to use our social media page with 500 followers and newsletter with 1,400 subscribers to share low and no-cost workshop, training, and support group opportunities, some in languages other than English. We continue to field calls and emails. One theme that has emerged is that of isolation of caregivers and students alike. Thinking beyond reestablishing connections, and there was a robust discussion about this at our meeting last night, we look ahead to the classroom. The district's emphasis on universal design and inclusivity means we also need to think about how we will educate non-disabled peers to actively include classmates who think, walk, talk, and interact differently. The onus cannot be on the students with disabilities to always develop skills to successfully be pushed in. This meme on the left is particularly obnoxious. We can't take credit for the correction, but it illustrates the point that everyone benefits from true inclusion, not a high five in the hallway, but belonging within the school environment. The research bears this out. We also need to do more work among the adults to stop talking past cultural understandings of ability and disability. At the district level, the tiered focus monitoring process and the special education director search took up a chunk of the year. We continue to advocate as issues and opportunities arise, such as DESE requiring districts to consult with CPACs on the Student Opportunity Act plans. We've also closely followed the conversations around the development and implementation of the general education multi-tiered system of supports. MTSS cannot be used to delay or deny evaluations for students suspected of having disabilities. Further, families cannot work effectively with schools unless they know when students are receiving Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions and for what purpose. The state's been clear on the importance of this. While commitments may be made in the design and rollout here in AB, we must ensure that integrity and transparency remain at the core in years to come. We've maintained and expanded partnerships with surrounding CPACs and those around the state. This was critical as CPAC leaders sought to stay on top of guidance, accurately convey information, and advocate. This has frankly been like running on sand. Current conversations are focused on the ESSER funds. AB also has a presence in a number of broader initiatives, including the IEP Improvement Project, the Regional Family Engagement Coalition, and a project Abe Gutierrez and I contributed to exploring how to better support and train family leaders. There's a note here at the bottom that an AB parent, Laura Mello, also helped with the new state dyslexia guidance. We've been incredibly fortunate as a district and as a CPAC to have a number of champions regarding reading instruction and intervention for students with dyslexia. Another among these voices, loud and clear, has been that of Diane Baum. Diane has served as the school committee liaison to the CPAC for a number of years, proactively seeking the CPAC's input on policy, working to understand the disability lens on any number of district initiatives, and bringing that perspective back to this body on an ongoing basis. She's worked tirelessly to advocate for both evidence-based literacy instruction for all students, as well as to bring the concerns of families of students with dyslexia to the fore. As Diane steps off the school committee, the ABC PAC is taking this opportunity to present her with this award for her service, with gratitude. Our sincere thanks also to Debbie Dixon for her leadership over the past 2 years during the most trying circumstances administrators have ever faced in an incredibly trying field. Debbie has been a sounding board, attending our meetings to share information, has taken very much to heart families' experiences. So Debbie, we've brought you one more thing to take care of. And as always, our thanks to this committee and the superintendent for your time and collaboration. Our meeting schedule for next year hinges on your own, so we look forward to sharing that with you soon, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you, guys. That was very nice. You did fine, Amanda. Does anyone have a question? Diane?
I just want to thank you for the recognition, and I also want to recognize you, Amanda. You and I have worked together since I got here on the school committee, long time. I have never stopped being the liaison to CPAC, even when there were 3 of us. You know, I was one of them. So I've learned a lot from you, and I really appreciate the way that you create liaisonships so that the work is not really transactional, and when things get rough, you have those relationships to build on. You've been just a tireless advocate, and I just want to thank you for your service. I will miss working with you. Thank you to you and Carrie. Thanks.
See, you answered all the questions in your presentation, so no need to answer any more. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
So our next presentation is from the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Family Advisory, and we have Lucienne and Dawn to join us.
Hello, good evening. We are very glad to be here with you tonight and present some of the work that our amazing Family Advisory has accomplished this year. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the membership, some of the understandings about our work and sort of what we were thinking about and our mission. You're going to hear from 4 of our amazing subcommittee chairs, and then we'll give you some time to ask some questions. I should have introduced my co-chair here, Lucienne, who has been a tireless partner this year. And I just want to thank all of these folks who dedicated a lot of time over the last few years. We started in this room on October 21st, 2019, and we were really excited. And then I think we had one more meeting in person, and then poof, we all went home for a while. So it'll be really exciting to get a lot of folks back next year to work in person here again. So I'm going to turn it over to Lucienne. Oh no, I'm not. So these are the areas that we focused on, and we sort of highlighted the verbs of all of it. So really thinking about diversity, inclusion, belonging through all sorts of mechanisms. We were really interested in facilitating conversation. So whether that was about input to some of the policies that came before you this year, for Peter and I to be able to ask some questions as the advisory, as different things came up in the community, from Zoom bombing to other, race-based incidents, and to also serve as sort of a liaison, which is a big role for any parent to play. They also did a lot of collaboration this year with our subcommittee chairs, and each one of the subcommittees was able to connect with one of the 4 assistant superintendents or superintendent or deputy sup in terms of collaborating on some things. And you'll hear more about that as we move forward. We have some data we have to look at for sure. And then also for us to make sure that as we're thinking about our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals as a district, that we have a sounding board to help us understand and think more deeply about the topics in ways that people who are white like me can't and haven't had experiences to do that, and to think through lots of different lenses, but also to create additional accountability for implementing those goals. So.
Hi. My name is Lucienne Schmidt. I think I've met all of you guys virtually or through email. I'm just here to give a huge thanks to our Family Advisory. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our subcommittee chairs who are sitting right behind us. Jane Archer, Heidi Kells, Dr. Nene Wright, and Maria Veronica Barnes. And also I want to thank all of the superintendents, well, not all of the superintendents, Superintendent Light, and all of the assistant superintendents that Maria Thierry and Deb Bookus and John, who is sitting right next to me. I want to really thank the members who are probably joining us virtually tonight. And I want to thank your hard work and participation in our family advisory over this past year. We've only been able to meet virtually, but we've gotten to know each other, learn from each other, and supported each other during this challenging time. Together, we analyzed policies and procedures, worked on proposals, and I know one group actually rang the new year together, writing surveys. Before we move on to the presentation that our subcommittee chairs have prepared for you, I want to say a special thank you to all of the children, big and small, who have made commute appearances in our virtual meetings. The hill we climb is a challenge, and we all get discouraged from time to time. Seeing and hearing our children remind us why we're all here today and what we're working for. We want to build a better world, a world that's a more inclusive world with equitable access to opportunities for all of our children. So I am going to yield to
So good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Nanette Wright, and I will be reporting out on the subcommittee for hiring practices. When we got together as a subcommittee, there was a group of us, and we started thinking about what would our goals and responsibilities be as we went forward in this effort. But before I go into the goals of our committee, I just wanted to thank our subcommittee members, Gabby Avila Brandt, Samantha Gould, Joe Rosella Pollard, Alexandra Surrey, Amy Walter, Eric Wong, and our liaison, Marie Altieri. So thank you so much to everybody on the team who is participating. We had a diverse group of people, which made our committee, I think, one of the best. Sorry, the rest of you guys, but we had a very diverse group. And when we had the subcommittee title of hiring practices, we said, you know what? Hiring alone is not going to solve the problems that we have. We need to think about hiring, the recruiting, and the retention, and how we measure our success. So when we came up with our goals, we said we're going to attack all of these things. We're going to look at how do we recruit, how do we hire, most importantly, how to retain a diverse group of teachers and staff to make this work. Next slide, please. Thank you. You want to drive? I can drive. Okay, thank you. All right. So the recommendations that we came up with in recruiting, the first step we wanted to take is, in order to get a diverse pool of candidates, you have to go to diverse sources. So we made some recommendations on how to reformulate the job postings, because you want the postings to remove any biases that could be in it when you start to read the advertisement for the position. Then we also went out to more diverse sources of where people might be looking for jobs and opportunities. So we went to LinkedIn and the Bay State Banner to get a more diverse group of candidates to come into the school system. The other recommendations we had are on the hiring practices themselves. We took a look at the interview questions, and we said, some of these questions could probably be rewickered in order to take out some of the unconscious bias in the question itself. Because how you ask a question, people always have a perception of what it is that you mean by that. So we worked very hard to give some recommendations on how to take the bias out. We also made some recommendations on how you conduct the panel interviews itself and the people who are on the panel doing the interviewing. If everyone looks like one subset of the population, a lot of times people who are coming for a job will be intimidated by that. So we made some recommendations. Let's try to get more diverse interview panel, but not just anybody on the panel, people who are actually qualified to be a part of the interview panel, so you get the best of both worlds. And then also, we ask that there be some anti-bias training, because we all have our implicit biases that we carry with us. And so if we could get this training out to people who are on the panels, they will be able to go into the interview, removing some of those biases, making the interviewees feel more comfortable, and it makes it a lot better from that perspective. Now, after the interview is over, one of the things that trips up a lot of companies and a lot of people doing the interviewing is how we go about scoring the interview process. And so we made some recommendations to actually have a rubric for the interview evaluations to make sure that people are scoring everything on themselves and you don't get the groupthink as you're starting to score your interview candidates. So we made that recommendation, and that is being used, and we're finding great success there. And the other things, we had a chance to look at the hiring policy while it was in its draft format, made some recommendations on that policy, including making sure you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and making the recommendation to put actually in the policy to ensure you have that diverse candidate slate, because that, diverse candidate interview panel and the diverse slate, which makes it a lot more fair and equitable. And then retention, the part that so many people forget about when they're trying to hire and recruit people of color into different positions. It's very important to take a look at what is the strategy to retain individuals once you get them into a position. So we made some recommendations to develop some specific metrics on what the hiring strategy is going to be, how you're going to keep the people in the pipeline as they come in for the interviews, and then how are you going to look at your retention numbers as you go forward. And then also made a recommendation of, we have district goals of what we want to do in these areas, but having a look at what are the metrics by school and look at those, because we want to kind of see how it all comes together instead of just at this top macro level. Some of the future work that we're looking at is we'd like to continue to do research on what kind of grants we might be able to get from the private sector or from nonprofit grants to encourage diverse applicants to come into the school district, and then also work to strengthen the paraprofessional program to continue to make that a pipeline for more teachers in the school district. So those are the things that our group has been working on, and with that, I will pass it on to our next subcommittee member.
Thank you. Thank you, Nanette. I'm going to pass it on to Maria Veronica Barnes.
Thank you. Just like the other committees, we had a big, diverse group of people, and Dawn and Deb were our liaisons with the district, and I would like to start thanking them for giving us the space to find our way through this work, which for us was really important. So Asma, Steph, Melissa, Sid, Elizabeth, Lucien, and Chi were members of our group. And when we got started, it was important for us to figure out what the goals that we had ahead of us were, and to define them. And the district was key in this, but they also allow us to, like I said before, find our way and think about what we want it to be, what we offer to the district. We created, and it was established since the beginning, that we wanted some kind of measure of how is that the district sees the work, and the people in the district sees the work, and what is it the people in the district want, not necessarily to define the work that happens, but to have an idea of where we're standing and what is the work that's needed. So that was one of the goals, to create that survey, and also to understand what's happening in the classrooms right now in terms of curriculum, what are the things that are still needed, and in which ways, what kind of support the district needed to make those happen. We had this, it was hard for us to focus exclusively on curriculum with the knowledge that for the curriculum to get implemented, the district needs resources. So, you know, there were times where we had to refocus, okay, this is not what we need to be thinking about, especially when it came when we were talking about resources, and then we will go back. So there were a lot of conversations between the relationship of what the curriculum says in theory and how it actually gets to the children. So the products that we deliver at the end was a survey, like our goal was, for families and caregivers to learn about what are their perceptions of the curriculum and the students in AB in relationship with that curriculum. We finished that, and that survey was sent to parents at the end of the spring, you know, like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago. And then when we had that, we realized that what was really important for us and for the administration is to hear and know the voice and the thoughts of our students. Whereas we didn't have yet the skills to design a comprehensive survey for all of our students, we realized that we could easily design one for our seniors, our exiting seniors, our graduating seniors, and include that in the survey that they do at the end of the year. So we adapted the survey we had, and they also are or have filled that. And then we will look at the data that brings and be studying. That's a future job for our subcommittee. And the other thing that we went about is to make recommendations from the subcommittee to the district with actions in terms of curriculum. And we decided to do that work, dividing short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions. Basically, a big part of our decision process was what is more accessible. What decisions or what changes can we make that have a bigger impact and they're easy for us to make right away. So we came with these 4 general recommendations and have a big list that the district can make available to you. And it's to continue the substantive K-12 curriculum work that includes the history of Indigenous and Black Americans specifically, as well as other marginalized groups. And we think it's very important to start early. We know that in high school history, our kids see some of this, but we really want to emphasize the importance of starting with young children. And then to continue professional learning for teachers, staff, and school leaders, to continue establishing anti-racist foundation across the district and the curriculum. An expansion of the structure of DEI administrations, the staff in the district, so that the great work that Dawn does can be implemented in all the schools. And a comprehensive DEI climate assessment of the district by an external evaluation team, and using not only quantitative methods, but also qualitative information to gather data from students and parents and also faculty. So that's our work.
Thank you, Maria Veronica. We're going to move on to Jane Archer.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've talked at a meeting. So I'm Jane Archer, subcommittee, thank you, of the family engagement. I'd like to thank my fellow group members. We have Deepika, Sananda, and Charmaine, who, fingers crossed, are at home watching. A big thank you to Dawn as well, who kept me very sane, helped us go from here to here and keep us focused, so thank you so much. So basically, family engagement, what is that about? Basically, for us, it was to help to increase the family engagement district-wide. And we had so many questions that helped us narrow things down, how we were going to start. So we started off with how does DEI connect with families, and why does DEI matter to our families? How do we engage all our families, but especially the most marginalized families within the district? Which families hold the power and the space within the district? And what district policies or procedures support or discourage family engagement? Thank you. So our group is small in number, but as I said, we are mighty in voice. Dawn is laughing because she knows what I mean. We're very passionate and we have a huge amount of ideas. So I thought it'd be nice for you to know where we kind of started and then how we whittled everything down. So our initial thoughts were to encourage to have active welcome committees in each schools. Some PTOs have them, some did have them, and we thought that would be a nice idea where new families would come and they get linked up with a family within the school. Also, how do we share what DEI is and the work that we're doing with our families? How do we get the message out? Do we use social media? Do we use school emails? Do we use the PTOs? How do we do that? We also looked at and would have really liked to have pursued this, but it was kind of a bit too big for our group to do a town-wide buddy system where families would move in, say, like myself from Ireland, and we would be twinned with maybe another Irish family or an English family or whomever within the district, not just the school. So I think that's possibly being implemented by some of the community groups within the town. So we gladly left that to them. And we also thought about perhaps doing a book list for families as well, that new families into the district or for the incoming kindergartners could be given a list of books that were maybe of interest to them, that would have the values of the district, that we could hand that out. So those were kind of our initial ideas. After much debate and much thoughts and lots of Zooms, we kind of narrowed things down to 2 tasks that we knew we could complete this year, which was important for us to have a little win and also to have something that we hope would help the kids next year. So our first thing was the cultural sharing program. This has been going on within Conant for 15, 20 years and was kind of championed by one of the teachers. My children went to Conant. During the kids' second grade, families are invited to come in as part of the Geography Maps project, and they discuss an important tradition to their family. There's a map up on the wall, the kids put a little pin where that country is, or the state if it's in America, and they discuss something. So my family, we discussed a folk tale from Ireland where the giants in Scotland and Ireland fought and who made Ireland. Other families talked about Chinese New Year. Other families come in their traditional gear. Some brought food, some played music, some talked about Christmas decorations. And it was a really nice way for second graders to feel connected to their classmates, connected to the families. Then when you were out at Roach Brothers or doing sport or whatever, you saw people and it helped to build a sense of community within your school. So our aim and our wish would be that would also be transferred to all the elementary schools within the district. It creates a kind, safe place as such for kids to talk about their traditions and feel comfortable with their peers. So we have submitted that with photographs. I should say in Conant we do, the teachers do like a photo album, and they take a little photograph of the family and they do a little write-up. The kids get a passport and that's stamped throughout the whole time where they're doing that as well, and there's a whole lot of other things that go with that. So we submitted that anyway to the curriculum coordinators, and we're hoping that they will agree to roll that program out over the summer. The next thing we did was a welcome video to AB. So we thought it would be a nice idea, with Dawn's agreement, that we could do a welcome video where we would invite families within the district to be videotaped at home to say welcome to AB. Those families would be from all over, so we sent a survey out to ask parents and families to be involved. We got over 80 families who speak 48 different languages within the district. I should have said that, sorry, that each family could say welcome to AB in their language that they use at home. We also have multiple families, we have blended families, grandparents, LGBTQ plus families, and 2 moms and 2 dads. So Vivian Birchall from Acton TV is helping us produce that video. Dawn can fill you in a little bit more on that, but she's going to do all the putting together for it. School-wise, it was fairly even with the distribution of families. I think there were 17 in the high school, 16 in the junior high, and the elementary schools were pretty even. And I think the plan is to have one for high school and one for the elementary schools, with the wish that would get sent out to all new families when they join the district, and also be on each individual school as well as the district website. And that's all. Is that right? Yeah. I had to think because we did so much. Okay, thank you.
All right, Heidi.
This is Heidi Colt. She chaired our Police and District Interactions team.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making time for this tonight. I would like to thank all of my subcommittee members, Kira, Krista Frey, Liz McGovern, Navpreet Singh, and Gail Townsend. Everyone contributed a really immensely important perspective to this work. I also love to thank Lucienne, who contributed, I think, was in every single of our meetings. And of course, to Superintendent Light, who was really invaluable in helping us see the bigger context of police and district interactions and connecting with us with all the right people. Thank you so much. So our goal was to, we realized we were starting out not entirely understanding, as many families in the district I think experience the purpose of the school resource officers within our schools, why they're there and what they do. And I think we learned a lot that they are tasked with student and staff safety and building security, and they cover all our events. But they also do an incredible number of things: wellness checks, truancy support. They train staff and administrators in de-escalating situations. They lead all of the safety drills, and they co-lead the building safety committee at the high school. And of course, they are intervening in and investigating any criminal offenses, having proactive and reactive involvement around the use of any controlled substances. And just as importantly, they're doing a lot of educating of our students in terms of digital literacy, the iSafe classes, also educating students about cyberbullying and dating violence. So they have a very broad role within our schools, and they have a lot of opportunities for interaction with students. So the questions that we started out asking were, I think that sort of safety lens in the sense of keeping schools and students and the individuals safe from physical harm is what we tend to think about when we think about school resource officers in schools. But we were really evaluating trying to say, how can we evaluate the success of this program specifically through a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because we know that in this country, in our climate of racial inequity in policing, the very presence of police officers in schools does not affect our students equally, and that is a really important thing that we wanted to just bring in our perspective. We wanted to bring into our findings. So we looked at what feedback might exist about the program. There is an official memorandum of understanding between the Acton Police Department and the district. And we wanted to look at those state-mandated, objectives to see whether those are being met. But we also wanted to look at how positive relationships between the SROs, students, and parents are being fostered, how they are being part of our community. I think one of the things we found was that this role is very, it depends a lot on the individual who is the SRO. I think that we have seen the two detectives we talked with, we have seen the ways that they have stepped up in their private capacity to coach teams and and be involved in a variety of ways. But it's really something that isn't maybe necessarily formally part of their role as an officer. We weren't able to sort of look at this work without also looking at discipline and the broader disciplinary context within our schools in terms of those situations that might escalate to SRO involvement. And so we needed to talk with a lot of people about how discipline is normally handled. And we also we felt it was important to talk about how student mental health challenges also influence specifically student interactions with police officers. So in terms of our work, we broke it into two phases. The first was gathering information. We took a look at that memorandum of understanding, and we also had conversations, first with Acton Police Department Deputy Chief Jim Cogan, and later with school resource officers Keith Campbell and Tyler Russell. And we also talked with some district administrators, including, of course, Superintendent Light, who was in most of our meetings, also Principal Dory, Principal Shen, Dana Lab, and David Crane, and they were all very helpful in helping us see how that looks at the elementary and the junior high and the high school level. We also looked at some wide field interviews with Vivian Burchell, the youth panel on racial relations, and she had also had a conversation with local police officers that contributed to some of our perspective taking. So what we produced was a report that we delivered just a short while ago to the district with a great deal of observations and some immediate recommendations ranging to longer term. So our first priority was just to make sure that we educate and inform our community about the purpose and the role of SROs and all that they do within our schools and why they are there. So we created just an FAQ that the SROs and administrators are having input on to be able to put up on the website over the summer. And we're also recommending just that they do a brief video introduction as well as make the most of opportunities to meet families in person as we return to in-person events. We also, one of their primary recommendations was a regular formal evaluation of the SRO program. I think this evaluation has been happening verbally, but without particular documentation as to how those objectives are being met. And one of the things we found was that everyone we spoke with, the administrators, the SROs, everyone wanted or was eager to have more feedback to make sure that their impact was matching their intent, and they kind of felt like they're operating in a space where they would welcome more feedback as to how they are doing, what they're succeeding in, and also what they can improve. So a regular sort of evaluation could be very helpful in that, we think. We also wanted to recognize the role of all of the staff who become involved in student discipline, and we recommend anti-bias and specifically cultural awareness for all of the different backgrounds that families, that our students are coming from in our schools. So just additional training around that for anyone who might be a recess monitor or someone who might have a role in that disciplinary process. And more than that, I think we just wanted to encourage more opportunities for the SROs to interact with families, with marginalized communities, with students, with parents, with community members. I think the more we get people having these conversations and knowing each other as people and as individuals, the better the outcome from this program will be. That's it. Thank you so much.
What questions might you have?
I just want to say thank you, because Dawn and I got to participate in a MASC school committee forum where we were asked to share all of the work that our district is doing in DEI, and of course Dawn was able to answer like the vast majority of the questions because of course she's been participating in all of this, and I was just sort of there as, I don't know, but to talk about school committee policies and everything else. And it was really remarkable because we were one of 3 school districts asked to share the work that we were doing, and there was a whole lot of other school committees there just to listen and to take this back to their own districts. And hearing this work, in person and getting to listen to the real depth of what all of you have been working on is really, truly remarkable. I mean, it was proud to be sitting on that panel and sharing what we were doing, because when you put it all down in writing, and Dawn and I spent a little over an hour kind of going through the questions that they had asked, and we were like, wow, we actually have done like quite a few things. And when you start to list all the things, it does, and then when you're sharing it at that kind of capacity, and there's all these people typing in the chat and saying like, wow, we never thought of doing that, and it was a really proud moment as a school committee member, and sitting here listening to everything that you've accomplished makes me even more proud, because it's astounding that we've had so many parent volunteers who have sat and done this work and really brought this forward to the district. And you all speak so eloquently about the things that you're doing, and you're not even looking at notes, and it really speaks to the amount of work that you've done. So thank you. Do you guys have questions? Evelyn?
I just wanted to thank the committee as well. You guys have done a tremendous job. I didn't even expect that we'll do half of this given COVID. just listening to you, I'm just floored at how much work has been done. You know, we all just thought time flew by and we didn't really think about what we're doing, but we've been able to do a lot over Zoom, and I'm just like floored at what you guys are doing, and you're digging into the things that really concern people in this community, right? The hiring practices, the school resource officers, the curriculum, like these are the things that are worrisome to people in this community. But I had a question for Nanette. I don't know, when you were looking at hiring practices, did you guys dig into any historical reasons why we have not been able to hire people of color in this community? And also, as we move forward, I think that I would like to see that the committee works towards disabusing the narrative that when you talk about hiring a diverse group of people, it means you're hiring unqualified people into the district. I like to say that one thing that we know how to do in this district is hire qualified people. What we don't know how to do is hire qualified people who are diverse. But I think that is a switch in people's minds that is hard for them to grasp. And I would like to see the committee do a little bit in disabusing that notion that just by having a Black person, an LGBTQ plus person at the table, it means suddenly our curriculum is going to go down and that they're not qualified enough to teach in this district.
Yes, so I think one of the main things that we looked at is to get qualified people, people of color to come into a school district, you have to open up the net, you have to cast a wide net to get the type of qualified people to come into the school district. If you only advertise in your local area and your local area has no diversity, then you're not going to get any diversity in your pool of candidates. So that's why we said, let's open it up on LinkedIn, let's maybe go recruit at HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Let's open up the aperture so that you get the qualified candidates. And the other big piece of that is how you write your job descriptions, how you write that requisition. If there really are, there's lots of research out there that you can kind of have bias in your requisition. So it looks like you're only trying to hire women, or you're only trying to hire men, or you're only trying to hire one set of groups. So you have to go through and look for the keywords and take that out. That's what a lot of the big companies are doing now. So that's what we tried to help the school district do as well by making those recommendations. And there's software out there that does it. It's not like just people deciding. There's software that can go recognize those things so that you can get it going. But I believe the most important part of getting those qualified candidates, getting the people hired in the school district is, one, cast the net wider, and then two, when you're doing the scoring, you need a diverse set of thoughts as you're evaluating the criteria of who should be hired, to make sure you don't get the biases in there and it disqualifies people that might be a good fit.
John?
Before Nanette sits down, the first thing, it's unusual to see a really spectacular presentation. It's even more unusual to see 4 back-to-back. So I do want to thank, the teams that, of course, make it possible for you to be here tonight and for you all to bring this to this. And I wanted to come back to the point that you made in your presentation with regard to retention. So it's great to get people in the door, but I think this ties to your pipeline commentary, that bringing them in the door, is only the first step. And then, having a good onboarding process, providing supports, showing the love, and then saying, and why don't you bring your friends, is, the way to long-term success. So I wanted to make sure that didn't get lost in the shuffle. And then the other thing that we say from time to time, your budget reflects your values. So with respect to that support question, for retention, if we see in our future budget money set aside to make sure we have a different kind of supports than we sometimes have for our beginning faculty, I think that would be very worthwhile.
Yes, agree 100%. Two parts of that budget and the support is, one, when you're trying to recruit, if you're trying to recruit from an area where people need to come and get housing, Massachusetts is quite expensive. So, trying to be able to adjust to that, or having transportation if you're in the inner city and trying to get out to Acton, you got to figure out how to work the T, which I still haven't figured out yet, moving here a couple years ago. And so it's those kind of equity type issues of transportation, what's the support system that's going to be available to you, whether it's going to the hairdresser or a haircut, or all of these different things kind of go into that retention pool that you have to kind of think about to make that support system.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that one thing? This was our first year where we actually started an affinity group for Black, Indigenous persons of color. And so that's been going all year. So actually, as some of the ideas have come out of this, we've also been talking with that affinity group about their ideas in the same manner. And one of the things we've started talking about that I think some members of the affinity group also have an interest in is actually helping to lead some of our efforts around developing some retention process, some of these other, recommendations that are coming out of the family group. We also want to support our current educators in helping us to develop those. So that's certainly something that's in the works, and we've been trying to make sure that, we're connecting the dots behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Nora and then Diane.
Thank you so much for these presentations, and I'm just really struck by the amount that you were able to accomplish in this year. And the question that I have for the different subcommittees is, when I first learned that there was a DEI family advisory group being created, I have to admit I was a little concerned that this was going to be an answer to problems that were raised that was going to be, well, we'll create a committee and we'll study it. And that maybe it would linger in sort of just studying and researching for a long time and change wouldn't happen. But one of the things I'm really struck by in your presentation is how much you were able to accomplish. And I'm wondering if that is how it felt to be on the subcommittees, if it felt like changes that you identified that you wanted to have made, were they made? And did you feel supported in that? Because the impression is that you did, and I'm wondering if that's true. And then I'm also wondering if there were things that sort of stood in the way of changes that you hoped would happen, and what those might be.
So, to answer your question on frustrations and how do we feel they were as such? I guess for most of us, because we don't work within the school system, or we're not high up within the school system, the main frustration that we had in our group, which was pretty minor to be honest, was just the length of time that we had to wait to get an answer. So we were quite keen to get the cultural sharing up and running, and in our heads we're thinking, it's a great idea, we'll get it done, it'll be out in the schools really quick and it'll be great. But I think that was just the only frustration we had, was just learning for us how the public school system works, and that it's not just a great idea, Dawn says great idea, go ahead and do it, that it's got to go through certain procedures and go through the curriculum people, and once that's done then hopefully you're good to go. So I think that was the main frustration, is just going from our backgrounds, I guess, in corporate world or whatever to public school, and the difference between that. But once that's explained and you understand how that system works, then you're fine, if that makes sense. Does that answer that a little bit? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to answer that question too, because I think the administration worked with us, which is the best thing that they could have done. They didn't, and it took a while to find that dynamic, right? Like, they didn't talk to us or want it from hear only from us. It was a team effort. So I'm really grateful for all and our group too, for all the support and space that we had to figure out things. And we proposed or brought some solutions that were short-term. And we had all the support to implement them. And we also made recommendations that we knew they were working on already. frustration, and it's not a frustration, it's part, intrinsic part of this kind of work, is that you're going to have things for which you have big obstacles. And I think one of them is that understanding that for things to get implemented and get down to the children, we need more resources. And, you know, budgets are already approved, and where are we gonna get those resources? So I think it's very important for this committee to hear that if we really want to make a progress in DEI issues, we're going to have to relook and review where is that we're putting our resources and what things are we gonna have to let go of, because we're going to have to let go of certain things and support this work. This work is not for now, it's not for a year, it's not for 5 years. This is work that has to continue to happen as long as the school exists. So we really have to re-switch the way we're looking at it and starting to, when we're assigning resources to this, understand that there is a lot that has to go in there because it's work that has to be continued and that requires a lot. So, you know, Dawn cannot do it all herself, and she's done a lot.
I actually would like to answer part of the question as well. I'm actually Chinese American. I'm an immigrant, so I know that on our advisory group, we have a diverse representation of the school community and the parents. Now, there's one really big challenge, at least for me, that is to not only, you know, overcome the barrier of language, like English and Chinese, but also a lot of our parents came from foreign lands with different school systems, different terminology. I remember one of those times that I was working with Assistant Superintendent Muriel Terry, I had to raise my hand and ask her, I'm sorry, but what is central office? All here, right? I want to say that the administrators here have been very, very supportive. You ask the questions, they will always answer it. But I think that there could be a challenge that is that for a lot of immigrant parents, they don't know what question to ask just yet. So that would potentially cause some of the slowdowns, right?
Yeah.
But we are on our way, so I hope that everybody can be patient, and so will we be, right?
Can I just add, I'm so sorry, Diane, but if I could just add one thing. You know, one tension that certainly was there, where there were so many good ideas that came up through the process, there were certainly times when we had to say, geez, there are 25 good ideas on the table. We need like 6 of them that we can actually take action on. And so, you know, there really is there's a tension when you go through that process, and that's a normal piece of that iterative process that you go through to kind of ferret out what are the real priorities that we want to move forward. And so I just don't want it to go unsaid. There were certainly tensions through the work process around how much can we do. COVID is happening. If there's a curricular idea like the project at Conant, we love the idea, but we were like, yeah, we can't give that to our teachers this year and ask them to do something new. So, you know, there are certainly things that took place, and I just, you know, everyone's so polite. I just want to make sure I say, oh yeah, no, we had tensions in the group, and we had tensions around how do we navigate these waters. So I just want to make sure that's recognized too.
So I've been on the committee for 6 years. I've been going to family advisory workshops and seminars and this and that with the Department of Education in person when we were able to do so in Zoom the last couple of years. And this is, I mean, strong work. It is an incredible honor to have you come to us. And the work is evident, the camaraderie is evident, and we really appreciate this. And really look forward to following this in the future. I had an observation and maybe actually an advocacy, or maybe this is more for school committee, but I happened to jump on, the Department of Education has a workforce diversity subcommittee who met today, and they have, so the Department of Education has been, you know, needing teachers, so they put out an emergency issuance of teachers' licenses, and the findings were stark today that there apparently the percentage of minorities is about 9% generally in the state, and just because just to offer some complexity to this, the emergency waivers resulted in a fourfold increase in the number of diverse candidates that they attracted. And it really spoke to the things like the testing and these are systemic. I mean, it's the housing, you're spot on about that. And there's so many things to work on, and we are a diverse community, but we're not attracting the diversity that we need. But the problem is very, very complicated. It goes all the way up to the state, the training programs, and it's keep doing the work, because it's good work. The other thing I wanted to say was about policing. I was really interested to see what was going to come of that, because I know Worcester just got rid of their SROs. There's just no SROs in their schools anymore. And the only experience I have is through another volunteer commitment that I've made over about 5 years to the Communities for Restorative Justice. So I only know SROs in my capacity as a white person and having disabled children with the truancy thing that was at play. But I only know them as people who provide exit points to the cradle to prison pipeline through C4RJ. And so I for one, I think that the education piece is a big deal, and that you need to educate, I'm not putting it on you, but we need to become educated, educate ourselves, and find ways to become more knowledgeable about the SROs and the limitations, the drawbacks of them, and the merits of having them. And the last thing I want to say, and this is more maybe just for the school committee, is I hate the discipline policy. And I know it's the law, and I think it should be replaced with a restorative model. And I think it's something that either the school committee could take on, or the advisory group could take on. Thank you.
I think I'm supposed to call on you, Deb.
I just wanted to follow up on the curriculum piece, and first publicly thank you for the proposal. And I don't know if you know sort of the outcome of the proposal. And so it did go to our literacy and our social studies curriculum coordinators, who then put it out to our teachers as a research and development opportunity this summer. We have 12 educators from across the schools, classroom teachers, English language educators, special educators, to collaborate together to be able to create a unit to be able to be put into our social studies curriculum across the district. So thank you very much for that. And maybe in normal times we could have done it a little bit sooner, but it will get done this summer. So I just wanted you to know the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. As the liaison to this group, I just want to say how in awe I am of the entire group. And I want to say for the record, especially for these sub-chairs who are women who are working, teaching, mothers, you did all of the things this year. You did it with grace. You did it with patience. You did it amidst tension. You did it. And so I just want the record to show that what you've seen here is the product of not a little bit of labor, emotional labor, physical labor, intellectual labor. It is everything. And so y'all are here so I can say thank you. And thank you for letting me witness and take part. But for y'all who are in the audience or who will watch this on replay, everyone who was part of this group participated in that labor, and you should be commended. So if you see anyone on the Facebooks, on the Zooms, in person, say thank you. Thank you.
Well, since there were 4 presentations, I get 4 questions, right? No, I only have one, and it's for Maria. So one of the things that was in the news recently was that Germany had decided to apologize for the genocide in Namibia. And I mention that just because the examples of human bad behavior are essentially endless. So you know, as we try and decide how we should teach, you know, the younger children in particular about history, there's a part of it that is, these are the particular circumstances we're going to talk about. And there's another part that relates to what is it to be a person, and to accept that each of us individually will do some good and bad things, and that we collectively will do some good and bad things. And how can we come to, you know, understand that and try and improve ourselves so that the history is there. But of course, the history can't change. But what we would hope to change, you know, is our future. So can you tell me a little bit about how that informs what you would like to see in curriculum?
Well, I'm not sure of what you're asking, but what I can tell you is that you can do that with 3-year-olds. And you do that through reading, through critical thinking. And when, you know, what you're teaching is critical thinking. And what you're teaching is, I don't know, whatever that book is about, but in the context of oppression. So you look for developmentally appropriate material, and then you have conversations about what happened in history. And at the same time, you have a social emotional curriculum that, you know, it's working with the ability for children, developing the ability in children to hold two things at a time, right? And to hold that they are great, loving children who sometimes lie, and, you know, and who sometimes hit their neighbor, and who sometimes eat the cookie in the cookie jar. So those things are really easy for children to understand. I do that, so I know it. I'm not just saying it, I know it. I live that every day. And children can understand that what has happened in our history, it's true, and that don't need to happen again. And that they are actors in changing it every day in the things they do. I will tell you something that one first grader said to me last week after we were ending our unit in slavery. He said, well, you know, his ancestry is Chinese. And he said, well, you know what, Maria Veronica? The United States is a really young country. There's so much hope in that, right? It's like we know that, yeah, we've messed up, but we're young. Like, we're learning to do this thing. I was floored by that because he said it really casually. I mean, it wasn't a big deal for him to say it, but so kids are able to hold duality, and they're able to understand that the mistakes that humans can also fix.
Thank you.
I also think the other place that will continue, as we continue to unpack the social justice standards, both the early childhood ones, and we start to embed them within our curriculum across the district, we're talking about diversity and the fact that we're different and that some of our skin is lighter or darker than others. To really make our kids from very, very young ages, they can talk about those things, they can understand them, they can recognize them, and sometimes it's us that has the hardest time having those conversations. And, you know, moving all the way up to justice and to action, where we're teaching our kids how they can, you know, be better humans.
So I had more of a comment than I like the diversity of the Family Advisory Committee. Look at them, different shades of gray, right? But where are the dads? It's, I mean, I'm looking at
We
the
have
list
dads.
and it's all
We
women.
have dads.
Where?
Oh yeah, they were dads.
But the women outnumber the dads, though,
Oh, yes.
right? Yeah, so they need to get involved. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It's mirrored on our own committee. I look forward to our new members from Acton joining.
Thank you all for this opportunity. We're excited in the fact that at the end of all of this, as Peter and I shared the district strategy draft with them with this group for feedback and input, that they really could see how the things that they were recommending were aligned with the things that we were thinking about and looking at moving forward. So thank you for this time.
Thank you.
And if I can just highlight, because the strategy is so fresh, you know, one of those pieces under building inclusive culture was listening to stakeholders, right? And so I just want to be really clear. This was one of the largest explicit moves of really going out and engaging a broad range of stakeholders to help give us input about our practices. And so you're seeing the product of that come forward. But I don't want to get lost that this is amazing work. Thank you so much for everything you've done, and it's really strategic to where we want to be going. So thank you.
Thank you all. All right, so in new business tonight, we have a first read of the FY22 Acton-Boxborough Regional High School Handbook. I think we're pulling more in.
Adam, do you want to bring Warren O'Grady?
They're both already there.
All right, look at that.
And I'm just going to say ahead of time, John, you don't get to ask any questions during this segment.
Non-debatable.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So, well, that is certainly a tough act to follow there. But I'd just like to take the time to run through a couple of the proposed changes for next year's student handbook for the high school. And with this year being kind of the year it was, we've done a lot of thinking about, I think, grander scale changes that we'd like to make as we move forward. But with it being a transition year where we're going to be welcoming a new principal, we didn't make extraordinary changes just yet because we certainly want her input and value what she wants to prioritize as well. So the first change that we would like to make comes from our world language department, and they have in the handbook the World Language Honor Society requirements. And previously, the Honor Society requirements for the World Language Society required 10 hours of community service. They would like to increase that to 10 hours of community service per year. The reasoning behind that is they've found that those service hours are really what is extending the passion for the learning of their chosen language and the sharing of the knowledge beyond the classroom as they kind of connect with the wider community. Their hope is that by increasing the community service requirement, that it will make being part of that Language Honor Society more meaningful. The second proposed change, actually the second and the third proposed changes are more just to kind of update the book and reflect what we have at the high school and what we basically don't have, but it was still in the handbook. So the second one is the writing center. We won't be having a formal writing center next year, but we have increased the number of academic support centers that we have. So those academic support center opportunities will supplement the writing center services for students. It also happens that just so happens that our staff person who did run the writing center for so long is retiring, but we've noticed that the students are accessing a lot of the writing support through their learning centers and their academic support centers, in addition to some of the peer tutors that we have available for students. Third is removing the reference to SAD, Students Against Drunk Driving, or Students Against Destructive Decisions, on page 17, simply because we don't have a SAD club anymore. That has morphed into our peer leader organization that we have. The fourth proposed change is regarding our after school time in the high school. We're asking that students, if they are in the high school after school hours, that they are in a supervised space like our library or the main lobby area. Students who are usually in the high school after school hours are either awaiting rides before or after practices, or using our library or meeting with teachers for extra support. And by waiting in the front lobby, they are in a more centralized location, so that they're either in a supervised location or in the main lobby, which actually does have more adult supervision with folks kind of passing through. And they're also able to see where the rides will pick them up. The fifth one is regarding our physical education policy. Previously, all students were required to change into appropriate clothing. And if they weren't in appropriate clothing, sportswear, then they would lose credit. We found that students, that wasn't helping students or motivating them to participate, especially those students who are uncomfortable with changing in locker rooms or uncomfortable in certain styles of clothing. So we are not requiring it, but we are encouraging it. For safety purposes, appropriate footwear will still be required. Lastly, we have changes to the format of our graduation requirements. It's important to note that the requirements themselves are not changing. It's just the format, and we're proposing this change for readability purposes. The class of 2022, 2023, and 2024, those requirements are all the same. They are not changing. But for the class of 2025, and this has been previously approved, the class of 2025, students will be required to complete 3 years of science, no longer 2, 3 years of mathematics, and 2 years of a world language. In this formatting, just like I said, it's for readability more than anything else. Are there any questions that I can answer, or comments that people would like to share?
Does anyone else have a question besides John? Amy?
I just have a comment. Thank you for removing the PE change requirement. I know that can be a very delicate situation, so thank you.
Thank you. I agree.
Excuse me. May I just say one quick follow-up to Lauren's opening in that, she talked about things that need to be looked at in the future. These items are very large items that really we're going to need to I would recommend that they start to form committees and look at these very early. These are things that are kind of going along with a lot of the changes that we're seeing in the school. A lot of it related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. But we need to study our attendance policy. Absolutely. We need to continue to look at our grading practices and assessment. Diane is right. We need to continue to look at our discipline practices, and we've started to move more of our discipline issues to a restorative model, but that needs to grow. And those aren't things you can just write in a book and are going to happen. Those are things that need to be studied. Those are things that are going to require professional learning and training to do it right. But I think over the next 2 or 3 years, those are the big things that need to evolve at the high school, in my opinion. Thank you.
I'd agree with that, Larry.
If you, at the discretion of the chair. Thank you, Maureen and Larry.
Thank you.
And so we'll look at this again for a second read June 17th when we are expected to vote, which is next week. Kevin, did you have a question?
For the fall changes suggestion to after hours. I just wonder, so now students ask to wait in the front lobby only. So I just wonder if that's going to affect the traffic pattern around the high school.
That's a good question. I don't think it will impact the traffic pattern, only because this policy is more for after students have left to go to practice or the buses have already left. This is really for the students who are receiving extra help after school or waiting when practice lets out. So it's not the entire school population. It's usually a handful of students at a time.
Yeah, but now it's a long waiting time. It's a very long queue to pick up the kids.
But I think she's talking about this is really just like after all the kids have left for the day.
Yeah, this isn't at release time at the end of the day. It's not dismissal time. It's more for the students who stay for that extra hour or hour and a half or even 2 hours after school for extracurricular commitments or, like I said, extra help. So it's not at, 2:47 through 3:15. It's more 3:30 and on.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a good question. Thank you.
I don't think I see any other questions, so thank you both for hanging around the meeting to wait to present that to us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice night.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Peter, you're next. The MSBA. Not that.
I know. So I'm just trying to not have.
Your picture up on the big screen?
Yeah. That's a little better. All right, so the next one, this is something that, we've submitted to you annually for the last several years. When the district engaged Doran Whittier a number of years ago to do a feasibility study of all of its schools, obviously Douglas and Gates came out as two priorities, but Conant was also a very high priority of a school, needing some further study for either a renovation, repair, replacement. We don't know what that looks like. But we know that we want to stay in kind of that MSBA pipeline. I took an opportunity when we did the placement of the last steel beam. We had the executive director of MSBA out on site, and I publicly thanked him for the continued partnership and future partnership for Conant. So he's looking very much forward to receiving our statement of interest on that. This is the same statement of interest largely that we've submitted in the past. A couple minor updates for enrollment purposes. Marie and JD contributed to that. We've also done some of the initial repairs from the Doran Whittier study to make sure Conant is still a viable building. But we do want to stay in that pipeline. We're not sure if, I would doubt that this is the year that the MSBA comes back to us and tells us it's time to go into the pipeline for Conant. Typically, you only get one building project in the MSBA pipeline at a time. And so I don't anticipate that we're going to be accepted by MSBA until after the Douglas Gates project is finished and off their books. But we should still keep submitting it so that when it is time for that, we can rise to the top of the pile. In past years, we have given you also a Blanchard repair statement of interest. The MSBA stopped funding last year the things that we need to do at Blanchard, so we're not submitting that this year. We're hopeful that they will open up in future years to some of the things we need, but right now that's just not on the table, so we're pausing for a year on Blanchard. But we'd like to get your vote on the Conant statement of interest, and then we will submit that to MSBA.
Move to approve the, oh, damn. I'll go ahead.
Yes. Before I start this very long motion, I think, are there any other questions about this before we? All right.
I'm just because I know we resubmit, and it's the same speech. Like they're not going to accept us until this is off the books. What is actually the merit of doing the work every year to do this then, and not just wait and then when we're off the books just apply again?
There's a process and procedure to every organization. And then there's also the relationships that you develop with organizations over time. And in all honesty, I think it's really important that the community continues to put forward the needs of the school district to MSBA, because that really stays in their mind. They do take very seriously when they come out to districts and they visit places, that makes an impact. So I actually think it's something that we just want to continue to do, just so it causes continued conversation between the state and our district around the needs that we have for capital.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, so one of the practical things that comes out of our submission is then they can roll all of that up. So when they go back to the legislature and say, this is what the need is, they have actual real data on which to base that request, as opposed to saying, we know that there's a bunch of stuff that hasn't come in because we don't have any money.
All right. I move that having convened in an open meeting on June 10th, 2021, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District of Acton and Boxborough, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, have voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated June 25th, 2021, for the Luther Conan Elementary School located at 80 Taylor Road, Acton, Massachusetts, 01720. Which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which the application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. For priority 2, which is the elimination of existing overcrowding, priority 5, which is the replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems, to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in the school facility, and priority 7, which includes the replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this Statement of Interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance of, the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits to the regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
And this is the best part of these meetings. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Super, that passes unanimously. I know, it's the best.
If you'd like, we can have them put that through a readability calculator.
Well, I was going to object to that wording, the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District of Acton and Boxborough. That felt very redundant to me.
Sorry, John. Okay, so in your packets, we have a proposed calendar of meetings for next year that I won't be chairing. And so I don't know that. Right, okay. So there was one question that came up, and that was that this year we did, for COVID reasons, we did a virtual budget meeting, but we didn't do our traditional budget Saturday. And there was many of us that felt that that was preferable. We were able to really target the things that we wanted to talk about and not spend a lot of time talking about things that we didn't need to. But we could have a budget Saturday if people preferred that. So there were two options on the calendar just so that we could get a general consensus and it wasn't just me making that decision. So they're both on the calendar so you can see what those options would be. Either we would have a meeting on a Thursday like normal, but we would have the option of dinner if people wanted to attend, and the meeting would then be from like about 6 to 9. Is there a general consensus? Yes, Amy?
Yeah, I would definitely agree to the evening meeting. I do like the fact that we will be starting an hour earlier. I think that's important, but yes, I would definitely vote for that over the budget Saturday. I think that worked really well this year.
I'm sorry? I'm going to actually let that go. The comment that I'll make is, I continue to believe that it is in the interest of the district for Acton Town Meeting to be moved later, which will have an impact on the development of the budgetary schedule through the year and how that relates to the governor's budget. So I mention that just because in looking at this calendar, Right now, it doesn't seem that it's likely that we would not have April town meeting last year, but if it does, obviously, then this should change in response to that.
Okay. I agree. I do think Acton should move their town meeting later, but, that is what it is. So, we have to vote this, Beth, or no? Okay, and so the only other thing that I would note, actually, because it hasn't happened in prior years since many people have been on the committee, is that the November 2nd meeting is a Tuesday because the MASC conference is actually happening this year. So those who have not attended the MASC conference, it's held in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and you get to go away for a couple nights and leave your kids at home. So, but we have the meeting on Tuesday so that members that wish to attend can go to the conference, which starts on Wednesday and ends on Saturday. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, but.
Can I just say a note on that?
Yep.
Just one note on that conference. There's when you're elected to a school committee, oftentimes you're very much kind of just set out making very, very impactful decisions for school districts, but without a lot of development that can go into that and support for your own kind of professional learning into that role. That conference is really one of the only ways that school committee members have access to really good quality professional development sessions. It's an opportunity to hear from other school committee members across the state, make connections, understand what's going on in other districts, hear about best practices, and hear some keynote speakers, and really kind of take a couple of days and delve into the education world in a way that you just don't get to. So it's a really good conference to attend if that's something that you're interested in. Beth just received the information, so I think we're going to be sending that to you shortly, along with some information to get back to Beth if you want to be registered for that. But just something to put on your radar because it is a good opportunity.
And
did
it's
you want to
really
mention that
fun.
you can meet other superintendents as well?
Yes.
It coincides with the Superintendent's Association conference as well. So it's a really good opportunity for professional development. It's a really good, almost like a retreat sort of for school committee to get to spend time outside of these Thursday night meetings. So highly recommend. You have something
I
to
was
say?
just going to make a motion to approve the regional school committee meetings as posted in our packet with the option of either a Friday, an evening budget meeting or the January 22nd, my birthday budget Saturday.
No. So I think that there was consensus that the Thursday night was the preference. So it would be the January 20th budget meeting. And no, we won't celebrate your birthday on budget Saturday. That would stink.
So I'm going to amend my motion to just nix the budget Saturday in this calendar.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good, that passes unanimously. Woo-hoo. Diane?
Okay, let's move right to a vote on these policies. Yeah, okay. So tonight, the policy subcommittee is bringing forward two policies for a second read. The first one is the evaluation of instructional program. We have had no feedback on this. So I'll take questions if there are any. And do you want to do one at a time, right? Call for a vote? Okay. Any questions? It's a good, solid policy? I think so.
So I would move to approve policy file IL, evaluation of the instructional program. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, Evelyn's not sitting here, so she didn't vote, but. Okay. That passes
Keep going.
unanimously.
Okay,
Yep.
the second one is policy KC, did I get that right? KCS, did I? Yeah, that didn't look right. I've only looked at that like 90 times, I should know. Public gifts to schools. So just a note on the process, if I had to use one word to characterize the process, it would be iterative. This has gone through several drafts, and it was extensively vetted by all stakeholders, meaning this was brought to the PTSO, PTO, PTF roundtable twice. They looked at both drafts, and we incorporated their input. The principals looked at it. The district leadership team has been a major part of this. So it's been well vetted, I'll say that. And I'm very proud of the vetting process. We've had really, really good input on this policy. I'm going to talk for a minute about the intention of the policy. So, schools are micro-communities, and donations supplement and enrich these communities. And 501c3s, especially the PTOs, they function as kind of co-culture builders along with the building administration. And this policy encodes that private funders engage in their work to support our schools. And the school committee wants to be able to identify when these donations become an equity issue. So in other words, when is it appropriate to scale a donation target, whatever that target might be, for the educational benefit of all? So to accomplish this task, the visual that keeps popping into my mind is a triad. I keep trying to kind of come up with this powerful visual that needs to, and the triad is the PTOs, the principals that they work with, and the leadership here in the district level. They need to start embedding, and they already are doing this, but they need to be embedding conversations about equity into the existing infrastructure. So we're not building out anything new. The PTOs meet, they plan. We want them to embed equity conversations in that existing encounter and infrastructure. When they work with the principals, who work with the school councils and come up with the goals, and then work with the PTOs to support those goals for the idiosyncratic things that come up that characterize whole schools, like outdoor learning at Blanchard, or project-based learning at Miriam, or art education at McCarthy Town. Those conversations, we would like them to embed equity into those conversations. And of course, on the district level, I mean, this is a district goal. So, just to accomplish this, the policy subcommittee, we looked at a lot of policies, and there are a lot of districts doing a lot of different things around equity and PTO funding. So we don't want to create more work. We don't also want to cap what PTOs can fundraise or raise funds for, and we don't want to pool. And these are all like suggestions that are floating around out there. We want to do the work of creating a culture of equity here, and this policy applies that to donations. So we want the private funders to think about the question, basically, that the school committee asks every year when we consider our budget. How do we allocate resources in a way that strikes a balance among considerations of fairness, expense, and administration? So I hope that helps with the intent. Couple of changes to current practice of note at the end of the policy is the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee. We will no longer accept money to pay for staff positions. There is a pre-approval requirement for fundraisers. There's a form, the KCDE, in our policy manual. And we are requesting submittal of an annual budget that identifies planned donations, including fundraisers from PTOs. Why are we doing this? Not to micromanage. We're not interested in oversight or micromanaging, but that's really the only way that we can flag which initiatives might be worthy of scaling for the benefit of all in the educational program of all students. The last one is, as of September 1st, 2022, no fundraising will be permitted during school hours. There are some exceptions that are noted in the policy. It is the belief of the policy subcommittee that no student's sense of belonging should be tied to a family's economic status or personal philosophy. So that if there are students walking around whose families don't believe in that, or they don't have the $20 in their pocket, they should not feel like an outcast or like they don't belong. That should just never happen in our schools. And that was the thinking behind that. That was also vetted with the PTOs at the roundtable and with the principals. So I just want to assure you that all of this has gone through the process that it needed to go through, and we're bringing it forward to you tonight for a vote.
Does anybody have any questions?
John.
This is such an important activity, and I've commented previously that, equity is easy when it's just words, and equity is hard when it's money. So your effort, to build, that discipline around these activities, is very much appreciated. And then the other thing, because I have to say it, one of my favorite parts of the meeting so far was the question, what is the central office? And I hope everybody who sits on the policy subcommittee, when they read these documents, reads them with that question in their mind. Because that was a much more eloquent statement than I will ever make about plain English policy.
Duly noted, John. Thank you. Move to approve policy KCD. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Awesome. That passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Okay, so I'm slated to just present to you the report, quick review of what we did this year. So I want to thank the members of the policy subcommittee, Evelyn, Jenny, Nora, Yebin. You were awesome partners to work with this year. Every single one of you brought so much to the table, really diverse opinions and takes on things, and good, robust discussion, and a lot of work this year. We had 5 new policies come through policy this year. Several were in regard with COVID, like the masks and the face coverings. And what else did we do? We had to suspend, we chose to suspend the homework policy. And we had to come up with public participation at school committee revisions based on some of the things that were happening during COVID. Equity was the theme this year, basically. And just right from the beginning, Dawn was absolutely instrumental, Marie was absolutely instrumental, and Deb was absolutely instrumental in pushing our thinking around equity and how to apply that to policy. It is just really, it's really challenging work. You have to think very deeply about the work, and we would not have been able to even come close if we had not had the leadership, such strong leadership in this district on that end. And I also want to thank Peter. He like showed up for everything, so yeah, thank you very much. I do want to just point out some of the things that we did and that you approved that had to do with equity. One was the commitment to an inclusive and representative educator workforce. That is a new policy, and I was happy to see the person from the DEI here who facilitated feedback for that. This is a policy that states that every student deserves to learn from educators who collectively reflect diversity within our district. And it's a promise to adhere to the Equal Opportunity Act, and that means taking specific action to counter bias and build a more representative workforce. And I just want to acknowledge Evelyn and her contribution to that policy that just kind of blew our minds and opened our minds. So I just want to thank you for that. Also, the adoption of new programs and courses of study. These were, embedded in these are our beliefs about being culturally responsive and to continuously adapt so that we can grow as a district. That's just really instrumental. So just lots of, and then tonight, the 2 policies were also very equity-based. So, I won't go on and on, but I think the work was so important, and it really was my honor to lead the policy sub. So thank you so much. And I hope that you'll all of you or some of you, we have to do some changing up, but really strong policy members, and I hope you continue the work.
And I just want to thank you, Diane, for your leadership and all of the work that you put into this. It was a huge, heavy lift this year with everybody having a lot going on. So instead of feeling like, you know, we were just treading water, I think we made a lot of really, really important progress. So, you know, your leadership and your I know what must have been a lot of time spent talking to the district leadership is what made it all possible. So thank you very much.
I also just want to say thank you, Diane, because you and I have worked together for 4 years, and one of the first things that we ever talked about was assistance. So I like to tell Peter all the time that I can like quit now, because this was like the one policy that I really wanted to change. Because my first year on school committee, I asked that question: do I really have to vote to approve $80,000 from a school to pay for staff? And I just, the amount of time that you put into this policy and the amount of outreach and the back and forth of going back and taking feedback and looking at a different way and helping through joint PTO to move minds along this. I don't think that when we started 4 years ago, you and I thought we'd be sitting at the table and like voting on this policy. Definitely not. It's been a lot of work along the way. And so I just really want to thank you for leading the policy in this direction, policy subcommittee in this direction, and getting this done. It's awesome. Nora.
Still being relatively new on school committee, I'm now getting comfortable with new people coming in and embracing that, but I feel just tremendously sad at your leaving school committee, and just wanting to say also thank you. I enjoyed being on the policy subcommittee tremendously this year, and I learned so much from everyone who was on the committee, and I always was just wowed, Diane, by the knowledge that you brought and the amount of research you put into everything that you brought forward, from studying others, you know, districts' policies to history, speaking with people, really taking in feedback from everybody that you could find to speak to about what we were doing. And it's such an incredible amount of work, and I think that a lot of the policies that came forward this year are exactly the work that we need to be doing. And I just feel, you know, energized by the movement of the district and how hard the whole administration worked together. But I want to thank you for making it happen.
Actually, two things. First of all, 5 people, by the way, is just like, that's the perfect amount of people. So like, never change that, because like we never had to cancel, and yeah, it was really just perfect, and we could really have some good discussions. And I think that one of the reasons that, I mean, policy is one of the things that we do. That's kind of our thing. That's our purview. But one of the reasons it felt so gratifying and relevant was because of the work that Peter and his team have done on the long-range strategic plan. You know, we were connecting to things that we knew, you know, we were a cog in a larger, you know, kind of wheel that, you know, we're pushing along the what's really culture building in this district. So, you know, anyway, just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully that will continue.
Well, just wanted to thank you as well, Diane, for leading the policy committee this year. I have to say that was when I joined school committee, other than preparing for this monthly meetings or bi-weekly meetings, I didn't know how I was gonna really be effective and nourish my soul. And sitting on the policy committee really gave me a sense of purpose, being on the school committee and contributing significantly to changing things and making concrete changes. And it's due to your leadership. And I think we'll miss that. Whoever takes that on has big shoes to fill, but we'll miss you. I'll miss our Friday morning, 8 a.m., dragging in front of the computer, but we get things done. So thank you so much for your leadership.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So in your packet, there are town meeting slides that Adam really kindly put together. So he gets to speak about them.
There's not much to say other than thank you to John for being a sounding board to put together the slides. You'll see them in the packet. It's what we'll use as our template to present to the 2 town meetings coming up this Saturday for Boxborough, and sometime in the future after I black out for Acton.
I
John,
believe
when's-
it's
John, when's the
June
Acton?
21st.
There you go.
And just as an FYI, tomorrow I will be over at Acton TV taping the school presentation for upload so that people who want to watch it before town meeting can do so.
We don't do fancy things like that in Boxborough, so.
I will say that, this presentation is really meant to sort of both introduce our communities to the committee and the work that's happened over the course of the year. So we do talk a little bit about what it was like going through a hybrid and a pandemic school year. And then we do give a quick update on where we are in the school building, which I see I'll be doing later on this agenda tonight as well. And then we spend some time talking about how we developed and came up with the budget that we're presenting to the two towns for their approval. So that's really the gist of this.
And as I mentioned in the email, our pre-COVID expectation was that everybody attends both town meetings. I understand that this is sort of like last minute notice, and it wasn't necessarily for those who are new to the committee knowledge that that's generally what we do, but the school budget generally comes up near the beginning of both meetings, and so it's not like you have to stay for the entirety of both town meetings. Boxborough starts at 9 a.m. And there's indoor and outdoor seating.
And the location is?
The Regency in Boxborough. So, the next thing is, unless anyone has any questions about that, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I will read each item name, and if any member would like it held, please say hold. Approval of meeting minutes of May 20th, 2021. Recommendation to approve a gift of $836.45 from the Mass Cultural Council to Blanchard for band equipment. A recommendation to approve gift of $2,100 from the ABPTSO and $4,000 from the Society for Science and the Public, the Regeneron Science Talent Search, to the high school. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Did you get that, Beth? It was Kira and then Diane. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Oh, it's so much easier. All right. Adam, do you have a quick building committee update?
Sure. Building committee met, in fact, last night, and progress continues to be made on the school building. For those of you who are in that area, you'll know that the boardwalk is in the process of being replaced. One of the things that I learned just last night is that we're going from a 4-foot wide boardwalk to an 8-foot wide boardwalk, so a big upgrade there, and it's really nice looking. The one thing I will share, we continue to be both relatively on budget and schedule as those things get measured. A really nice fact that I saw last night in the update was, as you know, we applied to the MSBA just this evening, or voted to approve our application for the MSBA to support us in the Conant School. We are partnered with the MSBA on this project as well, and as part of that partnership, they do reimburse a portion of the work that gets done. And so to date, we've submitted reimbursements for over $26 million worth of work. We've received reimbursements of over $11 million, so our effective reimbursement rate to date is 44.9%, which is really amazing. That is obviously due to change as items get submitted to them and identified as both reimbursable and not reimbursable. But it is a great partnership, and to answer the question, why do we continue to put our interest in for Conant, is because it's a great benefit to our community, financial support from the state to continue to improve our facilities. Peter, do you have anything else to add from the meeting last night?
No, I think, the only other thing we talked about briefly was that the budget continues to be very favorable for the building project. We had a brief discussion and a couple of questions around whether or not we projected that we would need the second borrowing. So for those of you that might remember, we borrowed 75 of the 78 million that we were authorized to borrow. So that leaves about a $3 million gap. We asked whether or not the project manager felt like he could project whether we would need the borrowing or not. He feels it's still too early, because the project really doesn't get closed out even until probably a year after, we move in. So he was cautious in that. There's a lot of site work that has to happen when we demolish the old schools. So, the closest I got was, well, it's very favorable now. It's possible you won't have to borrow, but we have a long way to go before we can predict anything. Tessa?
That's fine. So while you're getting the warrant organized, so we talked a lot about process tonight. So I think, this point that you just raised about contingencies, what could happen and how decisions would be made as to whether certain things would or would not be done. And I thought it might be worthwhile to spend a minute to talk about the fact that that primary responsibility rests with the building committee. And the composition of the building committee, is diverse. It's not just the school that's sitting there, it's finance committee, it's people from the towns. So that the decision about whether something, is appropriately used for the contingency, will be made by a diverse group, so that it will come back to us, the school committee, not for a decision about what we should do, but simply as we need X additional dollars, or we don't need any money, however it comes out. But the actual spending decision rests elsewhere.
Sorry, I was trying to do 4 things at once, and one of them was not listening to what you were saying. So, not you. I wasn't listening to what Peter was saying, which is why Peter was like, there's a question. Sorry. Okay. The warrants are in your packet. I move that the school committee vote to approve payroll warrants as follows. Number P2124, dated 5/2021, in the amount of $2,832,080.82. Number P2125, dated 6/3/2021, in the amount of $2,805,490.75. Payroll deduction warrants as follows. Number 21-024 PR, dated 5/2021, in the amount of $1,163,551.35. Number 21-025 PR, dated 6/3/2021, in the amount of $558,622.18. And vendor warrant as follows. Number 21-024, dated 5/27/2021, in the amount of $1,677,105.02.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Awesome. That passes unanimously.
Tessa, can we back up to ALG?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So the ALG did meet after our last meeting to decide how to modify the ALG plan in light of the double counting associated with the fire station debt, both be inside the budget and counted as a separate item. The finance committee recommended that be used to reduce the tax rate, and that was accepted by ALG. So that's the way the ALG plan sorted out.
Sorry, John, I didn't intentionally mean to skip you. Adam?
I actually have a question about the warrants. So as part of the new normal for COVID, we are no longer passing and signing warrants at the meeting, and instead we're reviewing those in advance and voting them on a voice vote. And my question is that something that we believe is worthwhile for keeping? Are we allowed to keep doing that, or will we go back to physically signing warrants in the future? And I ask this question because really Dave's been here all night, and I think he needs an opportunity to speak.
Well, so are you giving me a vote on the matter? You are? I think it works great. I actually thought about this before the meeting, that this will be the first time that you're all back and not shuffling 1.5 foot of papers among each other and trying to listen to presentations and doing whatever the other 2 things Tessa was just trying to multitask. It seems to me as though that if I were you, I'd want to have spent my time before a meeting, after a meeting, if there are questions, but not during a meeting. So from our standpoint, it works great. And so I was not intending to go back to pre-COVID procedures.
Thanks.
Were you timing Dave's comment?
No, it's 9:19. It was the time for the meeting to end.
Oh, great. Peter, is there anything you needed to, did you want to highlight the retirees or? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to highlight in your packet, we listed the retirees for 2021. I just think it's so important that we recognize the retirees because the quality of our schools is built on the work that all of our staff do on a daily basis for the benefit of kids. So I just want to make sure I thank all of our retirees for their service. We are working on some tributes to the retirees, things like that through the process. It's a little different with COVID than what we traditionally do, but we do, have a lot of thanks, and we're very, very grateful to all of our retirees for all of their work. One other thing just to put on your radar, because some of you may see some things from me, we are working now on our second annual report that we will mail home to all homes. If you remember, 2 years ago, we did that. As a way of kind of communicating directly with all stakeholders in the community about what's going on in our schools. We didn't do it last year because every waking moment was spent trying to plan for reopening of schools. However, we do want to resume that as a regular function. Those of you who were new to us this year and are new members will receive a request for a very, very short bio and a photo. So that we can introduce you, through that annual report to the community. We'll also do kind of a school committee photo at the retreat on July 20th, so plan for that, appropriately. And then we will also, really the focus of this annual report is telling the story of the pandemic. And what school has looked like, because I actually think beyond just communicating with the community, what a great story to archive and be able to go back to. So that's what we're working on next, and I am so thrilled to pass that off to Andrew Shen as of July 1. It's amazing how many things we've found that fall into the category of special project.
Well, and unless Peter has extra special things planned for July 20th, what he was referring to is a workshop and not an actual retreat. Yeah, because you looked a little confused because Peter called it a retreat.
Oh,
just a workshop.
Sorry. Yeah, it's a workshop. You just voted it too, so it's on the calendar. Yeah, we'll do dinner at 5 and then the workshop after.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.